Without a doubt, one of the most important parts of any Assassin's Creed game is the combat system, as well as the enemy archetypes you face in each game. These range in quality from bad to great. So today, I'm going to rank the combat from Assassin's Creed up to Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Credit to Brooks 2017 for the idea too. Now, the Assassin's Creed Syndicate combat system is probably my least favourite. For one, it's very light, too light I think, and it doesn't feel very satisfying to pull off pretty much any of these moves, and there's no real weight to the combat either. It's also just very unsatisfying to look at. I like when a combat system gets something out of you, whether it be flashy or more brutal, just something interesting that gets you engaged in the fight and makes you want to keep going. No matter whether you use knuckle dusters, cookery knives or canes, it always just looks silly, and like most things in Assassin's Creed Syndicate, you just can't take it seriously, and it got very tedious at times as well. Assassin's Creed Odyssey has a combat system that's fast like Syndicate's, however one of the things that makes it better for me is that it's far more fluid and easy to move about in a fight, giving you much more of a sense of freedom. Odyssey also leans far more into the RPG side of things, with a variety of abilities which tend to look about as silly as a lot of the moves did in Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and in my opinion, overcomplicate things while neglecting the bare basics of a good combat system. The lack of any weight in your movements on top of superhuman abilities make the combat feel far less grounded, and worst of all, it's probably the most tedious combat in the entire series. I've complained a lot in the past that Odyssey is a game geared towards sucking as much money out of you through microtransactions as possible, and that is never clearer than in the combat. Auto leveling is switched off, and every enemy, even those on your level, feels as if they're made of steel. So even if it isn't necessarily a difficult fight, it's more a prolonged one than anything, and everyone can take just a ridiculous amount of hits. The rebuttal to this is usually along the lines of, oh, well I fully upgraded this skill and used the epic Malacca slaying spear engravement, and also I spent half a month's wages on Helix credits, so it's just your fault really. And it's like, no, a game that prides itself on player choice really shouldn't only function with certain skills or weapons or engravings, but should just always be good, and it never is, ever. Alright then, so the next spot on the list is one I'm sort of mixed about. I feel as if the combat system in Black Flag and Rogue would get a harder time if most of the core gameplay wasn't naval. However, the combat in these two is just okay. While there's a few captains at the odd fort or man of war, the most common three enemy archetypes being the Brute, the Scout and the regular foot soldier are really easy when you just break their defences and finish them off in 2 button presses. And it's not like easy is bad, but tedium is, and going into combat doing the same thing again and again it gets quite dull, and the animations aren't particularly that engaging either. The weapons also leave a lot to be desired. In all my time playing these two games, I've never noticed a difference between the default weapons and the more expensive ones, and even if there was, the extra power they would give you would push things even further towards the easy side than they already are by default. On the whole, it's just serviceable, it does the job, but it could do a lot more. Alright then, so AC1 is where we start getting into the good stuff. It's a nice difficulty, and every fight is engaging, with each one feeling fairly unique. I love that the counters in this game won't necessarily kill other enemies, as it adds to an unpredictability when fighting the stronger ones. The same high level enemies can also grab and counter you, and I really love that, as in a lot of Assassin's Creed games, it can feel like you're just whittling down this ineffective enemy that's just very much like a script of code. However, when they fight back, they'll kick you, or they'll stop your attacks. It feels far less like a chore, and it actually puts you on edge to a certain extent. The different archetypes are also pretty well done as well. You can easily just mow down the weaker enemies with a few hits, but you wouldn't use that same strategy when fighting one of the armoured guards. AC1's combat is fairly unique, as it's far less predictable, and I really enjoy it. It's quite good. I was honestly quite surprised that Assassin's Creed 2's combat ranked right in the middle of this list, because it's probably the one I've spent the most time actually playing. That's not to say it's bad though, it's actually pretty good. For one, there's far more variety in the weapons in this game than there was in AC1, and although I usually just end up buying the Sword of Altair and not Cinqueda, I appreciate how much choice there is, as each weapon really changes the way you play, as well as giving you different counter kill animations that are a lot of fun to watch actually, as well as there now being choices of armour and the fist fighting being properly developed. The game is far less difficult than Assassin's Creed 1, with less emphasis on timing and precision, although the game makes up for this with plenty more things you can do in the actual combat that you can learn or just completely neglect, and I love how much there is to do with this game's combat system, and it's very replayable. Assassin's Creed Origins was a huge change in what we come to expect from Assassin's Creed combat when it came out, and as things stand, I enjoy it quite a lot. It's a game that lets you use a variety of weapons with different speeds, weights, damage, all that kind of stuff, with multiple different choices in how you play, which all feel equally valid. Where you'd have to button mash in a game like Syndicate, Origins is far more strategical, as well as being outnumbered by enemies actually has consequence, and being surrounded by more than 6 or 7 enemies feels actually daunting, where it could potentially just feel like a chore waiting to happen in other games. The skills are also quite well done. There's no skills where it feels like you have to have them, or a certain build to get the most you can out of the combat. Things like the chain throw are really well done and feel satisfying to use, but you can use whatever skills you want, whatever weapons you want, it's all viable, and I really like the combat in this game. I really didn't expect Assassin's Creed 3 to rank this highly on the list, but I think it earned its spot. Assassin's Creed 3 is probably the best game to play when it comes to just going on a massacre. Where Assassin's Creed 3 and 4 are different is in the weight of the combat and the enemy archetypes. Assassin's Creed 3 has a lot of similar enemies, but I feel like you see more of the captains in this game. As well, the scouts are also more difficult as you have to wait for them to attack rather than just being able to break the defense and kill them. There's also plenty of enemies too. If you want to go on a rampage, as I just mentioned, all you have to do is start killing enemies in the middle of the street, and they'll just keep coming until there's bounty hunters after you. And I really love that you can just keep fighting as much as you like. Where in other Assassin's Creed games it might feel a bit hard to go on one massive fight and you just have to look for guards at times, that isn't an issue in this game. And also the game introduced brutal double counters, which, I mean, epic, and they also do look quite nice, which is cool. The biggest downside to this system, I have to say, as well as black flags, is the lack of a health bar. Sometimes to actually start a streak by killing an enemy, you'll need to hit them a good few times, and if you're fighting in a big crowd, you can hit a brute 4 or 5 times and then be interrupted by someone and have to start again, and if there's a lot of enemies crowding around you, it can just get really annoying to just have an enemy one hit away, get hit and have to do it again, and sometimes even a few times. But besides that, it's really good. Now, in the second to highest spot on this list, I've put Assassin's Creed Unity, and I really love this system as it's just a perfect blend of a lot of the best parts of Assassin's Creed combat. It's flashy, responsive, and has a bit of difficulty to it. It was the first game in the series where actually being outnumbered by guards did feel like a threat, no matter the archetype of the enemy. The variety of weapons was really nice too, as well as there being a few skills that let you play in a few different ways. You couldn't get streaks in the same way as you could in, say, AC4 or 3, but that wouldn't really fit the game, and there's some really nice killing moves in here anyway. In general, the combat animations look quite smooth considering the general clunkiness of this game, and it's a shame there's people out there who didn't give this combat more of a chance. Now, at the number 1 spot, I put the Brotherhood and Revelations combat system, with the only difference between the two being the Janissaries and Revelations adding a little difficulty, which I did like. Honestly, I could have easily switched around Unity and Brotherhood because although they're basically opposites, they're both excellent at what they're trying to do. Brotherhood introduced execution streaks and they're at the most overpowered in this game, but I think they're really satisfying, especially with those new double kills you could do in the game with the throwing knives and the pistol. They were great. I think it's also quite fitting that this is the combat we got with Ezio in his prime, as he's clearly at his most skilled point in his life at this point, or in other words, it's piss easy basically, but I do like it a lot. I'd often find myself just looking for guards to kill, and I'd always replay that 4th mission of breaking Katarina out and just killing as many guards as I could before one of them eventually grabbed me, and you could get like 20, 25 in a row, and it was so fun, but at the same time you're quite on edge because you're trying to not lose that streak. With that said, I think Brotherhood's combat is best in missions like this one, because in its free roam there's about groups of 4, or maybe you'll get one on a horse that comes up to you, And it's a combat system that ultimately works because it's so fast and you're going from person to person so quickly. And groups of 4 work in a game like Unity. In fact, most of the time they're in 2s, but in a game like this, you just want more. And when they're in 4s, you're just quite annoyed because you want to kill more people. So maybe if they went around in groups of 6 or 7, that would have been better, so fights just lasted longer than about 10 seconds. But yeah, I really do like this one. Alright guys, so I just wanted to say thank you for 600 subscribers. We hit 500 like 3 days ago, and it's mad we got 100 in 3 days, because from September to March, it took me like 6 months to get my first 100, on top of like a big shout out. So 100, and I'm just realising this is going to come out at least like 5 days from now, so we might have even more. But I just wanted to say thank you guys for all the new subs, I really do appreciate it. Anyway though guys, what do you think of this? What are your favourite combat systems, what are your least favourites, and what things do you agree with in the video, and what things do you disagree with? I am interested. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you didn't, maybe let me know why. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all next time.